In a world that often looks away, a 10-year-old girl with eyes the color of a stormy sea refused to blink. This is the story of how her small hands, armed with nothing but courage learned from a school poster, saved the life of a mountain of a man, while a room full of adults did nothing. It's the story of how that single act of bravery in a greasy spoon diner ignited a firestorm of loyalty, bringing 175 of the country's most feared bikers to their knees before a child. They came not with violence, but with a promise, a righteous fury that dismantled a corrupt system piece by piece, proving that the most powerful family isn't always the one you're born into, but the one that rides for you when the world leaves you for dead. The rain didn't just fall, it attacked. It hammered the corrugated tin roof of the Last Stop diner with a relentless, angry rhythm, each drop a tiny fist beating against the world. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee, sizzling bacon, and the quiet desperation of people going nowhere fast. Fluorescent lights hummed a weary, buzzing tune, casting a sickly yellow glow on the cracked vinyl of the booths and the weary faces of the handful of patrons. Lily sat alone in a booth by the window, her small legs dangling a good 6 inches from the floor. She was 10 years old, but the worry in her eyes belonged to someone much, much older. A half-eaten grilled cheese sat cooling on its plate in front of her, the cheese congealing into a sad orange plastic. She had no appetite. Her stomach was a tight, cold knot of fear. She watched the rain trace frantic, crooked paths down the glass, blurring the world outside into a swirl of gray in the distant, bleeding colors of taillights. Each car that passed was a reminder of how far she was from where she needed to be, how far she was from her mother. Clears throat. You see, Lily wasn't just waiting out a storm. She was on a mission, a desperate, impossible mission, born in the sterile, whispering corridors of a hospital room. Her mother, Sarah, was sick. Not a cold or a flu, but a deep, insidious sickness that had stolen the light from her eyes and the strength from her body. The doctors used long, complicated words that Lily didn't understand, but she understood the look on their faces. It was a look of pity and professional sadness. She understood the beeping machines that were a constant, metallic heartbeat in the room, and she understood the crisp, white envelopes that arrived at their small apartment, each one a fresh wave of panic. The last one had been the worst. A final notice. A cold, typed letter stating that if a payment of $5,000 wasn't made within 48 hours, her mother's non-essential long-term care would be discontinued. Discontinued. The word echoed in Lily's mind. It sounded like they were talking about a television show, not a person, not her person. They were going to turn her mother off like a light switch. Her mother had cried when she read it, silent tears that broke Lily's heart into 1,000 tiny pieces. Lily had held her mother's frail hand and made a promise, a fierce, whispered promise that she had no idea how to keep. "I'll fix it, Mommy," she had said, her voice trying so hard to be strong. "I promise, I'll get the money." Which is how she found herself here in this forgotten diner 20 miles from home. In her worn pink backpack was a small, velvet-lined box. Inside it rested her grandmother's locket, the only thing of real value her family had left. It was gold with a tiny chipped diamond in the center. It was her last resort. She was on her way to a pawn shop in the next town over, a place she'd only heard about in hushed, worried conversations between adults. She'd walked 2 miles in the biting wind before a kindly truck driver, seeing her small, determined figure on the side of the highway, had offered her a ride as far as the diner. "You wait here for the storm to pass, little miss," he'd said, buying her the grilled cheese. "Someone will be by to help you." But no one was coming. The diner was an island of listless apathy. A couple in a corner booth argued in low, tense whispers. A salesman stared into his coffee cup as if it held the secrets to the universe. The waitress, a woman with a tired face and a name tag that read Brenda, moved with a slowness that suggested she was walking through invisible molasses. They were all trapped in their own little bubbles of indifference. Then the door opened. A blast of cold, wet air swept through the diner, carrying the scent of rain-soaked leather and gasoline. It made the bell above the door jingle with a frantic alarm sound. They entered not as a group, but as a force of nature. 5 of them, all huge men, clad in heavy black leather vests adorned with patches and skulls. Tattoos spilled down their forearms like inked rivers. Their boots were heavy on the linoleum floor, each step a dull, solid thud that seemed to shake the very foundation of the place. The diner went from quiet to silent. The arguing couple stopped. The salesman looked up, his eyes wide. Brenda, the waitress, froze mid-step, a coffee pot held in her hand like a weapon she wasn't sure how to use. They were bikers, not the weekend hobbyist kind with shiny new bikes and pristine gear. These men were the real article. Their leather was worn and creased. Their faces were etched with the lines of hard miles and harder living. They looked like they had been carved from granite and fury. The man in the lead was the largest of them all. He was a true giant, with a chest as broad as a barrel and a thick, gray-streaked beard that covered the lower half of his face. His vest was a roadmap of his life, covered in patches. A large one on the back depicted a snarling bear's head, surrounded by the words, Iron Grizzlies MC. His eyes, deep-set and intelligent, swept across the diner, missing nothing. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace that was somehow more intimidating than any sudden movement could ever be. They took up a large round table in the center of the room, their sheer size making the space feel cramped and small. They didn't speak loudly, but their low rumbles of conversation filled the vacuum of silence they had created. Lily watched them, her heart thumping against her ribs. She had been taught to be afraid of men like this. They were the villains in stories, the shadows in the alley. But sitting here, steeped in her own terror, she felt a strange flicker of something else. Power. They radiated a kind of undeniable power that the rest of the world seemed to lack. The leader, the man she would later come to know as Bear, ordered for them all. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble, like stones tumbling downhill. 5 steaks, rare. 5 black coffees. Brenda scurried away to the kitchen, her fear making her movements quick and jerky. Lily tried to go back to watching the rain, to thinking about the pawn shop and her mother, but her eyes kept being drawn back to the table of giants. They ate with a focused intensity, not speaking much. The big man, Bear, was cutting into his steak when it happened. It was sudden, unmistakable. He made a sound, a choked, strangled gasp. His fork clattered onto his plate. His eyes went wide with a terrifying combination of surprise and panic. His hands, large enough to palm a basketball, flew to his throat. His face, already weathered, began to turn a dusky, alarming shade of red. The man was choking, and the world stopped. The other bikers at his table shot to their feet. "Bear!" one of them yelled, his voice laced with panic. Another one started pounding him on the back, hard, meaty thuds that did nothing. The salesman at the counter gasped and turned away, as if not seeing it would make it not real. The couple in the corner booth simply stared, their mouths agape, frozen like statues. Brenda came out of the kitchen, saw what was happening, and let out a small, helpless squeak, her hand flying to her mouth. They were all watching, just watching, paralyzed by fear or shock or simple, stunning inaction. But Lily wasn't. Something inside her snapped. She had seen this before. Not in real life, but on a brightly colored poster in her school nurse's office. A poster with simple, clear diagrams. What to do if someone is choking. She didn't think. She just moved. She slid out of the booth, her small sneakers silent on the floor. The world seemed to slow down, the frantic shouts of the bikers fading into a dull roar. All she could see was the giant man, his face now turning a horrifying shade of purple, his eyes pleading. She ran to him. One of his men, a biker with a long braided beard, saw her coming. "Get back, kid," he growled, trying to wave her away. But Lily ignored him. She darted around him, getting behind Bear's chair. He was trying to stand to get air, but his body was failing him. He was huge, a mountain of a man, and she was a tiny 10-year-old girl. It was impossible, it was absurd. But she had made a promise. She was a fixer. She couldn't get her arms around his massive torso. It was like trying to hug.